When my daughter was diagnosed with depression, she told me the only thing that could make her feel better was a designer necklace. I said no. So, she threw a fit of full-blown meltdown and trashed the store. Instead of backing me up, my husband decided to pin the blame on me. She's just a kid. All she wanted was a necklace, and you couldn't even give her that? No wonder her condition is getting worse, it's all your fault. He refused to help me deal with the mountain of debt piling up. But the very next day, he showed up with our suddenly cured daughter, cozying up to his rich, glamorous ex-girlfriend. That's when the truth hit me, the depression was fake. The real plan? To leave me drowning in debt while they happily moved on. To top it all off, my daughter even had the nerve to text me. "Dad and Miss Page are perfect for each other. You're just some broke, ugly woman, don't bother us again." I couldn't help but laugh. Good thing I saw this coming. Before everything fell apart, I made sure to max out my husband's credit cards. Chapter 1. I woke up with a start. Somehow, I'd gone back in time, back to the day before everything fell apart. In my previous life, my daughter Jessica had thrown a fit when I refused to buy her a designer necklace. She smashed an expensive display case in a luxury store, leaving me to pick up the pieces, millions of dollars worth of debt. The very next day, my husband, David, wasted no time leaving me. He'd already latched onto his rich ex-girlfriend, taking Jessica with him and abandoning me to face the financial ruin alone. I spent the rest of that life in misery, working myself to the bone with 5 jobs just to chip away at the debt. Meanwhile, they were laughing it up in a mansion, driving luxury cars, and living the kind of life I could only dream of. And now, here I was again standing at the crossroads of my life, staring at a scene that felt all too familiar. David's voice, dripping with feigned concern, broke the silence. "Jessica's been feeling worse lately. Let's take her to the mall for a little shopping. It'll cheer her up." Jessica turned to me with wide, pleading eyes, like she was the picture of innocence. But not this time. I wasn't going to fall for it again. I shook my head. "I'm not feeling well today. Maybe another time." Jessica's face crumpled instantly, and she turned on the tears like a seasoned actress. "All I want is for us to spend time together as a family. Is it really that hard? Mom, do you hate me because I'm depressed? Do you think I'm a burden?" David, ever the master manipulator, jumped in, playing the role of the understanding husband. "Catherine, come on. Jessica's been through so much. Can't you just do this one thing for her? A mother should put her child first." He grabbed my hand, trying to pull me toward the door. I stared at him, my heart pounding with suppressed rage. How had I been so blind before? In my last life, I hadn't seen the truth until it was too late. The moment our family hit financial trouble, David had already made his exit plan, cozying up to his wealthy sugar mama. After I gone, he even had the nerve to tell people I'd abused Jessica, painting himself as the hero who'd rescued her. And to think, I'd once fought my parents to marry this man. Caught between their relentless pressure, I finally gave in just like I had before. Sure enough, as soon as we passed that luxury boutique, Jessica wasted no time. She pointed to the most extravagant necklace in the display case, her voice rising in that familiar, grating whine. "Mom! You promised to buy me this for my birthday. How could you forget?" Her words hit me like a slap, dragging me into memories I didn't want to relive. But this time, I wouldn't let them trap me. Chapter 2. In my last life, after they left me, I spent the rest of my days trapped in a living nightmare. I was drowning in debt, suffocating under the weight of it all. I wanted to find them, to make them answer for what they'd done, but I was blacklisted, couldn't even leave the city. Creditors were hounding me day and night, banging on my door until I didn't dare step outside. Then, one day, while sweeping the streets for a few miserable coins, I saw them. Jessica and David. They were in a sleek, brand new luxury car, laughing like they'd won the lottery. Jessica had that damn necklace around her neck, the one that had destroyed half my life. She saw me. And instead of looking the tiniest bit ashamed, she smirked, rolled down the window, and tossed her trash at me. "Hey, lady!" she sneered. Pick that up for me, will you? At that moment, my heart couldn't take it anymore. The rage, the humiliation, it overwhelmed me. I collapsed on the spot. And just like that, my story ended. The irony? I wasn't always like that. I used to be the daughter of a wealthy family. David only got his cushy job because of my family, and Jessica lived a life of luxury, attending elite schools I paid for. She had everything she could ever want. But when my family fell on hard times, they didn't just abandon me. They made sure to crush me on their way out. Jessica and David to snakes, biting the hand that fed them. Even now, as the memories flooded back, my nails dug into my palms so hard I could feel the sting of blood. But then I took a deep breath and let a small smile curl at the edge of my lips. It didn't matter anymore. I'd been given a second chance. This time, I wouldn't let them get the better of me. When Jessica looked up at me with those fake, teary eyes, begging me for the necklace, I didn't hesitate. No, I said firmly, my voice calm but unyielding. In my last life, this was where she'd spun her little web of lies, telling everyone I'd broken some promise to her. She'd made me look like the bad guy, and the passers-by complete strangers had turned on me, scolding me for being a mother who couldn't keep her word. But the truth? I'd never promised her anything. It was just another one of her manipulative games. And just like before, the moment I said no, she exploded. Her tantrum started with a scream. Then she grabbed a potted plant from the corner and hurled it at the glass display case. "You liar! You promised me!" She shrieked, her face red with fury. "You're the reason I'm depressed, you horrible woman!" The crash was deafening. The glass shattered into 1,000 shards, scattering across the floor. Inside the case, the luxury goods were ruined, some dented, others snapped clean in half. Jessica reached into the wreckage, plucking out that necklace, the one she'd been eyeing all along. She slipped it around her neck, tilting her head as if admiring herself in a mirror, a smug grin spreading across her face. Her expression said it all. "What are you going to do about it?" The store employees were too stunned to move until one of them finally scrambled into the back to call the police. Meanwhile, a crowd had gathered, and the murmurs started. "My mom used to promise me things and never follow through," one woman said, shaking her head. "No wonder the poor girl's depressed. Yeah, you can see it in her face." Another chimed in. "Her mom's probably been like this her whole life. It's no wonder she snapped." The words were biting, but this time, they didn't faze me. Jessica? Depressed? That girl had never known a single day of hardship. Even after the bankruptcy, I bent over backward to give her everything she wanted. But gratitude? That was too much to ask. Instead, she was here, spinning her lies, painting herself as the victim while throwing me under the bus. But this time, I wasn't playing her game. I crossed my arms and leaned back, watching the chaos unfold with a calm smile. Let her destroy everything. The more damage she caused, the better. Chapter 3. David's face twisted in disbelief as he stared at me, confused by how calm I remained. From the moment Jessica had grabbed the potted plant, he had launched into his usual over-the-top act. "Jessica, stop! Don't do this! Don't smash anything!" he shouted, his voice dripping with fake panic. "These are luxury items. Do you have any idea how expensive this stuff is? We can't afford to pay for it." He kept pleading with her, hands in the air like a helpless bystander, but he didn't take a single step toward her. No attempt to stop her, no effort to pull her away. He just stood there, playing his part. A grown man like him, if he really wanted to stop Jessica, it wouldn't have taken more than a second. But no. He didn't lift a finger. In my past life, I'd been too blinded by Jessica's tantrums to notice his subtle performance. I had wasted all my energy trying to rein her in, never realizing that David was just as complicit if not more. The sound of hurried footsteps snapped me out of my thoughts. The store clerk had returned, this time with a security guard at her side, both of them looking agitated and tense. "Excuse me," the clerk said sharply as she approached. "Is that your daughter?" She gestured toward Jessica, who was now surveying the wreckage she'd created. "We've already called the police." The clerk quickly flipped through a clipboard, her expression tight with frustration. "We've tallied the damages. It comes to 7 million. Will you be settling this now, or should we wait for the authorities to handle it?" Jessica had gone on a rampage, smashing nearly every display case in the store. Only now, when the bill was staring him in the face, did David decide to put on the next act of his performance. He clutched his head with both hands, wailing dramatically. "Why didn't you stop her?" he yelled at me, his voice thick with fake anguish. "This is a disaster. We'll never recover from this. 7 million? We'll be paying for this for the rest of our lives." I could almost laugh as if I didn't know exactly what he was thinking. I shot him a cold look, completely unfazed, and then turned to the clerk. "I'll pay now," I said simply. David's head snapped up, his fake despair melting into confusion. He stepped closer to me, lowering his voice as though we were sharing a secret. "Catherine," he hissed, his tone dripping with disbelief. "You do remember we're broke, right? Where are you going to get the money for this?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost like he was trying not to smirk. "You should stop pretending and just call your family for help. We both know that's the only option." Jessica, meanwhile, had put the potted plant down and crossed her arms, a smug expression plastered across her face. "What's with the act, Mom?" she sneered. "If you really had that kind of money, you wouldn't have fought me over a stupid necklace. Who are you trying to fool?" Neither of them expected what I did next. I didn't bother answering. Instead, I calmly reached into my bag, rummaging through it as they both watched, their smug expressions faltering just slightly. Then, I pulled out a sleek black credit card and handed it to the clerk. "Charge it to this," I said, my voice steady and deliberate. The room fell silent. Jessica froze, her sneer vanishing as she stared at the card in my hand. David's face twisted into something unreadable, part shock, part disbelief, as if his carefully crafted plan had just gone up in smoke. For once, neither of them had anything to say. Chapter 4. Before they could process what had just happened, the clerk swiped the card, sealing the deal. Did I have that kind of money? Of course not. But David, who'd latched onto a wealthy sugar mama, absolutely did. In my past life, he'd gone out of his way to convince me this card was useless. "It's empty," he'd said time and time again. "I should cancel it." And I, naive and trusting, believed him. What I didn't know back then was that this card was his secret treasure chest. Every penny he'd stashed away, his private savings, the extra cash his mistress slipped him, it all went onto this card. He lied because he didn't want me to find out. And like the fool I was, I never questioned it. I maxed out my own credit cards, trying to pay off our debts, but I never once thought to try his. Not this time. A sharp ding from David's phone broke the silence. He fished it out, his fingers trembling slightly, and glanced at the screen. The moment he saw the notification, all the color drained from his face. He staggered, his legs giving out beneath him, and collapsed onto the floor like a sack of bricks. Curious, I leaned over and took a look at the phone he'd dropped. Payment of 7 million yuan successful. Wallet balance, 344,373.18 yuans. I let out a quiet laugh. That mistress of his must be very generous. Jessica, meanwhile, had been watching the whole thing unfold. The moment she realized I'd used their money, the money they'd planned to keep living their spoiled, luxurious lives, her lips started to twitch. Then, predictably, she snapped. "You used Dad's card?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "That's his money. You can't just take it." Her face contorted with rage as she pointed a trembling finger at me. "You promised me the necklace. You're the one who has to pay for it." But her tantrum didn't stop there. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted the gold jewelry store next door. Her expression shifted, and I could practically see the gears turning in her head. Bending down, she grabbed the potted plant again, hoisting it high above her head. If you don't pay," she screamed, "I'll smash the gold store too." Panic shot through me. David's card didn't have much left on it, and if Jessica destroyed anything else, the debt would fall squarely on me. David could always run back to his sugar mama for more money, but I'd be left with nothing. I was preparing to rush forward and stop her when, out of nowhere, the police arrived. 2 officers stormed in and tackled Jessica to the ground before she could take another step. The potted plant fell from her hands, breaking harmlessly on the floor. "Let me go," she screamed, thrashing wildly as they pinned her arms behind her back. "Mom! Do something! Tell them to let me go." Her voice was raw with desperation, but I didn't move. I just crossed my arms and watched, cold and unmoved, as the officers dragged her away. Jessica was sentenced to 2 weeks in detention. In my past life, she'd ended up in detention too. But that time, I'd been so distraught that I knelt outside the police station, begging the officers to show her mercy. Not that it mattered. The next day, David had swooped in with a fat stack of cash, bailing her out in no time. The 2 of them had left me behind without a second thought, running off to start a new life together. I only found out when I visited the detention center, worried sick about Jessica, only to be told she'd already been bailed out. But this time things were different. Their plan had failed. David didn't have the means to bail her out, and I certainly wasn't going to lift a finger to help. When it was all over, I finally let out a long sigh of relief. But I knew better than to let my guard down. Neither Jessica nor David was the type to give up easily. I heard rumors that Jessica had been throwing fits every day in detention, screaming that she'd refuse to see me if I dared to visit her. This time, I made sure to disappoint her. She stayed locked up for 2 weeks, and I didn't visit her once. In fact, I hoped she'd stay in there forever. But when the day finally came for her release, both Jessica and David vanished without a trace. It was as if they'd disappeared off the face of the earth. Just as I was starting to breathe easy again, the police showed up at my door. "Ma'am," one officer began, his tone grim. "We've received a report. Your daughter was seen pushing someone off a building. The victim is in critical condition and currently undergoing emergency surgery." Chapter 5. I was choking, gasping for air as their hands clenched tighter around my neck. Just as I felt I couldn't take it anymore, a police officer intervened, shoving them away before things turned fatal. The girl Jessica had hurt was named Sophie. They were classmates. I recognized Sophie immediately. Her family and I had crossed paths before years ago because of Jessica. Back then, Jessica came home crying almost every day, sobbing that a girl named Sophie was bullying her relentlessly at school. She told me it was so bad that she'd fallen into depression because of it. I was furious. At the time, our family was still financially strong, and I stormed over to Sophie's house, demanding an explanation. Her parents, terrified of causing trouble, fell to their knees with Sophie and begged for forgiveness. I thought justice had been served. But in this life, I finally learned the truth. It had all been a lie. Jessica had manipulated me, spinning the story to make herself look like the victim when, all along, she'd been the one tormenting Sophie. She wasn't just a liar, she was a bully. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been complicit in Sophie's suffering, and the guilt weighed heavy on my chest. Trying to calm the situation, I stepped towards Sophie's furious parents, my voice steady but full of regret. "Please," I said, meeting their tear-filled eyes. "Give me some time. I'll find Jessica and bring her here so we can get to the truth. Whatever happens, I'll take full responsibility for what she's done." To show I meant what I said, I handed my ID and other important documents to the police as collateral. Sophie's parents exchanged a wary glance, their anger and distrust palpable. "Don't believe her," Sophie's mother said, her voice trembling with rage. "She's probably just trying to cover for her daughter." The officers hesitated, exchanging uncertain looks before nodding. "Let's find Jessica first," one of them said. "We'll get the full story then." They assigned an officer to go with me, a precaution in case things escalated. Thankfully, during Jessica's time in detention, I hadn't been idle. I'd spent those days digging into her and David's lives, uncovering every secret they thought they'd buried. The most important discovery: the address of the new house David had purchased. In my previous life, after abandoning me, David and Jessica had likely moved there to start fresh. This time, I wasn't going to let them slip away. With the officer by my side, I went straight to the address. Even before we knocked, I could hear their voices echoing through the walls, loud and full of smug laughter. "Don't worry, Dad." Jessica's voice rang out, sharp and gleeful. "That Sophie girl? She's basically crippled now. She'll never recover." David chuckled in response. "And that old hag? She'll probably spend the rest of her miserable life working just to pay off Sophie's medical bills." Jessica cackled. "Aren't I brilliant? Last time, we almost got caught, but I handled it perfectly." "Exactly," David said with a sneer. "That woman wasted so much of my money. Good thing I stole a lot from her before she went bankrupt. If only we'd known her family's company would crash so soon." Jessica added, "We could have drained her for even more before we reported them to the authorities." My heart stopped. So that was it. The reason my father's company had gone under, the reason our family had been ruined, it had all been their doing. For years, I'd blamed myself, wondering if my father had made a mistake, if I could have done something differently. But now, hearing this, the truth was clear. David and Jessica had conspired against us. They'd framed my father and destroyed everything we had all so David could leave me and live openly with his mistress. They hadn't just betrayed me, they'd betrayed the family they'd lived with for over a decade. Rage surged through me, so intense my whole body shook. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Without thinking, I kicked the door open, the lock shattering under the force. The door slammed against the wall, and their laughter cut off instantly. David and Jessica turned toward me, their eyes widening in disbelief. Chapter 6. It didn't take long for Jessica and David to realize the game was up. Their smug masks fell away, and they stopped pretending altogether. "So, what now?" David scoffed, crossing his arms like he had all the time in the world. "You found us. Big deal." Jessica sneered, leaning against the doorframe. "What are you gonna do about it? Your life's already in ruins, isn't it?" She gave me a mocking once-over and smirked. "Honestly, instead of wasting your time here, why don't you go find another job or two? You're gonna need every penny you can scrape together to pay those medical bills. And Sophie?" Jessica's voice turned sharp, her words dripping with venom. "That little rat's probably a cripple by now. Why don't you adopt her as your new daughter? You two deserve each other." Their laughter erupted again, loud and cruel, as if they hadn't just admitted to ruining lives. I felt my fists tighten, my nails cutting into my palms. The anger was bubbling under the surface, but I kept it in check. Because I knew something they didn't. And soon, they'd stop laughing. Right on cue, my phone rang. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I answered it on speaker, making sure they heard every word. "Sophie's awake," the doctor on the other line announced. "She only suffered minor injuries. She's expected to recover fully." The room fell silent. Jessica froze, her body stiff like someone had hit pause on her. "No, that's impossible," she muttered, her voice trembling. I saw her fall. I watched it happen." I turned my gaze on her, my expression cold and unrelenting. What kind of person had I raised? I thought bitterly. How had my own daughter, someone I'd loved and protected, become a monster who saw human lives as disposable, obstacles to be crushed if they got in her way? This wasn't the first time Jessica's cruelty had surfaced. Not long ago, a video of her smashing a luxury store's counter had gone viral online. Her behavior was so outrageous, so baffling, that it drew a lot of attention. I'd been following the comments, trying to piece together the picture of who Jessica had become, and one comment stood out. "I know her. She's not depressed at all. She made up lies about me, mocked me using my family's accident, and even threatened to murder me. She's not a victim, she's just jealous and unhinged. The username was familiar. After some digging, I realized it was Sophie. That's when I decided to reach out to her. When Sophie saw me for the first time, she instinctively stepped back, her body tense with fear. It broke my heart to see how much pain Jessica had caused her. I apologized to her truly, deeply apologized for everything and explained Jessica's behavior. Slowly, Sophie began to relax, though I could tell the wounds Jessica had left would take time to heal. Before I left, I warned her to be careful around Jessica. But as I was walking away, I spotted Jessica in the distance, heading straight in Sophie's direction. Something felt wrong. I stayed back, watching from the shadows. And that's when it happened. Jessica shoved Sophie off the building. "Exposing me online, huh?" Jessica hissed as she pushed her. Perfect timing. I needed a victim anyway. The fall wasn't from a great height. Jessica had clearly planned it that way. It was intentional and calculated. High enough to cause permanent damage but low enough to avoid outright taking her life. She wasn't reckless. She was methodical. If Sophie had been paralyzed or left in a vegetative state, the medical costs would have been astronomical. Jessica knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted to crush me under the weight of that debt for the rest of my life. But Sophie had luck on her side. She hit a lower platform on the way down, which softened her fall before she landed on the ground, and I was there. I'd stayed just long enough to witness the whole thing. The moment Sophie fell, I sprang into action. I flagged down a passerby and had them call an ambulance immediately, ensuring she got medical attention before the golden hour slipped away. Only then did I leave. Now, standing in front of Jessica and David, I calmly set my phone down, the room heavy with tension. Their earlier confidence had drained away, replaced by unease. Chapter 7. David and Jessica shared a quick glance, their eyes locking in silent agreement. It was like watching two predators silently coordinate their next move. Without a word, David strode over to the corner of the room and grabbed a thick wooden stick that had been leaning against the wall. Slowly, deliberately, he turned back toward me, his grin widening into something cruel and sinister. "Well, Catherine?" he drawled, the stick resting heavily in his hands. "You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? You had to come here and ruin everything." Before I could respond, he raised the stick high above his head and charged at me. At that moment, it was obvious what they intended to do. This wasn't just a warning. They wanted to murder me, dispose of my body, and vanish without a trace, probably off to some faraway country to live the high life. But if they thought I was defenseless, they were in for a rude awakening. I didn't panic. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I let out an ear-piercing scream, the kind that could shake walls. Right on cue, the door slammed open and the police burst in, their weapons drawn. "Drop it!" one of the officers barked, stepping forward. David froze mid-swing, his face twisting from rage to panic as he glanced wildly between the officers, the police car parked outside, and me, standing there with a calm, knowing smile. I dusted off my hands like I'd just finished a chore and pointed toward Jessica, who was still standing behind him, her face pale. "There she is," I said matter-of-factly, tilting my head toward her. "That's my daughter Jessica. Officers, please take her away. And don't bother going easy on her this time." Jessica's expression shifted instantly, first to shock, and then to fury. Her lips curled back in a snarl, and her whole body tensed as the officers approached her with handcuffs. "You can't do this to me," she screamed, thrashing as they secured her wrists. Her eyes locked on mine, blazing with hatred. I raised an eyebrow, letting a smug smile creep onto my face. "Bye-bye," I said, waving at her with exaggerated nonchalance. My tone was dripping with mockery. That was all it took to push her over the edge. Jessica lost it. She twisted and jerked against the officer's grip. Her teeth clenched as if she wanted to rip me apart. But no matter how hard she fought, her strength was no match for theirs. They dragged her out, kicking and screaming. For the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand. Jessica had gone too far this time. Attempted murder wouldn't be swept under the rug. She'd finally face the consequences of her actions. Or so I thought. But I had underestimated them. A few days later, I began noticing David making frequent trips to a certain villa on the outskirts of town. Every time he left, there was a smug, triumphant look on his face, as though he'd already won a game I didn't even know I was playing. And then, just like that, the news came: Jessica had been released. Apparently, because she was still a minor and because Sophie's injuries had been deemed non-life-threatening. The charges were reduced. Add to that David's money and connections, and Jessica had walked free as if nothing had happened. When I heard the news, I felt like I was about to explode. No matter how hard I tried to fight back, no matter what evidence or proof I had, David always found a way to twist the situation to his advantage. But I knew now that fighting back wasn't enough. David wasn't just some overprotective father pulling strings for his daughter. He had an entire system behind him, a network of power, wealth, and influence that let him rewrite the rules to suit himself. If I wanted to win, I needed more than just determination. I needed power of my own enough to take on the empire David was hiding behind and finally bring him and Jessica down for good. Chapter 8. After some investigation, I learned that David's wealthy woman was named Paige, owning several companies and being extremely wealthy and influential. Most importantly, her companies were our biggest competitors. No wonder David and Jessica tried so hard to destroy me to please her. During this time, I also returned home. In my previous life, after our family went bankrupt, I rarely visited my parents, focusing on supporting the family. After being betrayed by David and Jessica, I was too ashamed to face them. Fortunately, I learned the truth about our family's bankruptcy being a setup. Maybe I still had a chance to save it. My parents were surprised and happy to see me. When they learned what David and Jessica had done, my father was furious. My mother took out a card from her room and handed it to me. "Catherine, although our family went bankrupt, this money is for you. We always knew David wasn't a good person. We saved this for you in case you needed it." I felt a pang of guilt and my eyes welled up. In my previous life, I had neglected them too much for David and Jessica. Even when the family was in trouble, I couldn't help. Fortunately, in this life, I could finally do something for them. I told my father I had heard David admit to framing our company. I suggested he thoroughly review the company's finances and legal matters and apply for an investigation order. Especially to investigate David. David had held a high position in our company, so he must have been involved in the scandal. My father, enlightened by my words, began his investigation. Chapter 9. Unexpectedly, David showed up at our door. His expression was sorrowful and serious. "Catherine, Jessica's depression has worsened. She's in the hospital now. Please go see her. We were wrong before. I've thought it through and cut ties with that wealthy woman. Just go see Jessica. As her mother, you know her mental state isn't good. She knows she did wrong and cries every day." Seeing his hypocritical face and fake concern, I felt nothing but disgust. Did he think I was a fool? I wouldn't believe for a second that they had turned over a new leaf. Seeing that I remained unmoved, a flash of panic crossed his face, and his pretense almost slipped. The next second, he suddenly dropped to his knees, his voice trembling. "I'm begging you. Jessica is our daughter. Just see her once. After that, you can divorce me or call the police, whatever you want." I stared at him, my eyes full of suspicion and wariness. What was he planning this time? Though I was curious, my safety came first. If I lost my life, this second chance would be wasted. To avoid being dragged into danger again, I spoke calmly. "If you come here again, I'll call the police." His eyes flashed with a terrifying light, making my skin crawl. He lingered at the door for a long time before finally leaving. The next day, after confirming he was gone, I dared to leave the house. But as soon as I stepped out, a pair of large hands grabbed me, dragging me towards a car. I turned to see David's sinister smile. Inside the car, Jessica glared at me with murderous intent. I struggled with all my might, screaming for help from passersby. "Help! They're kidnappers!" A crowd quickly surrounded us. A brave bystander stepped forward. "How dare you kidnap someone in broad daylight? I'll call the police." David's expression instantly turned sorrowful, pretending to be pitiful. "I'm not a kidnapper. She's my wife, and the girl in the car is our severely depressed daughter. We had a fight recently and separated, but our daughter's condition worsened, and she wanted to see her mother. I just wanted to bring her to see her mom." He pulled out our marriage certificate from his bag, showing it to the crowd. The photo was indeed of us. Seeing this, the crowd believed him and dispersed. "Oh, it's just a marital spat. Sorry for the misunderstanding." Watching the crowd leave, I panicked and tried to call them back, but Jessica covered my mouth with a scarf. In the chaos, I smelled a strong, strange odor from the scarf. A wave of dizziness hit me, and I collapsed. In the car, I could faintly hear their voices. I was worried about getting caught for drunk driving and killing someone. Then I remembered we have a scapegoat. "Dad, your plan is brilliant. Not only do we avoid jail, but we also get rid of that bitch. She won't be able to defend herself, and she probably can't even afford a lawyer. Once I get rid of Catherine, Paige will see my commitment. I don't know why she's been so cold to me lately." The drug took full effect, and I lost consciousness, unable to hear the rest. When I woke up, the car was parked by a remote lake. David and Jessica were gone. I was moved from the back seat to the driver's seat, strapped in. Groggy, I sat up, trying to understand the situation, when I heard police sirens approaching. Soon, an officer knocked on the window. "Step out of the car. We received a report of a missing person in your vehicle." Dazed, I got out, and the officers began inspecting the car. One officer used a breathalyzer on me. "There's a body in the trunk." I turned, shocked, as the breathalyzer turned red. The officer looked at me and then at the lake, smirking. "Drunk driving and trying to dispose of a body, huh?" Chapter 10. On the way to the police station, handcuffed, my mind raced. David and Jessica's despicable scheme had trapped me. This time, they weren't just trying to saddle me with debt, they wanted to frame me for murder, condemning me to a life in prison. They were already at the station when I arrived. Seeing me, David started his fake crying. "Catherine, how could you be so stupid? Drunk driving is bad enough, but hitting someone and trying to flee? Our depressed daughter is still in school. How could she handle this?" I glanced at Jessica, who looked pale, as if my actions had devastated her. The victim's family arrived, and one of them, eyes red with rage, slapped me hard. "You killed my son. I'll kill you." They screamed at me, and though David pretended to hold them back, his eyes gleamed with schadenfreude. I forced myself to stay calm and spoke slowly. "I swear I didn't hit anyone. I want to appeal. If I lose, I'll accept any punishment, even death." Jessica laughed at my request, full of disdain. "We can't afford a lawyer. Stop making a scene. The police already confirmed you were drunk, and the body was found in your car. Just admit it. Don't waste time and money. Dad and I will manage without you." Jessica pretended to cry. "We warned you not to drink and drive, but you didn't listen. Now look what happened." Watching their performance, I remained firm. "I want to appeal." During the trial, they sat in the family section, wearing victorious expressions. They thought this trial would secure their luxurious future. But they didn't know I had used my parents' last bit of money to hire a lawyer. When my defense attorney walked in, their faces froze. Chapter 11. Clearing my name wasn't difficult. David and Jessica assumed I was too poor and uneducated to fight back, not realizing my parents had saved me. They thought I was the only one they could bully. If not for this second chance, I might never have been so clear-headed. In the limited time, my lawyer and I gathered substantial evidence. We recovered deleted data from the car's dashcam, found witnesses, and retrieved surveillance footage. David was careless, and the scattered evidence was enough to convict him. The large screen displayed his crimes. The audio confirmed his guilt. Catherine is a penniless, uneducated housewife. I have a bright future. It's only right she takes the fall. She's so stupid. Even if she's framed, she won't know what to do. She can't afford a lawyer. This time, we're safe. As the trial neared its end, the judge sentenced David to life imprisonment. When the verdict was announced, the glimmer of hope in David's eyes vanished, replaced by disbelief. His face turned pale and he was speechless. Jessica couldn't hold back her tears, and this time, she wasn't faking. "Judge, there must be a mistake." Watching David being taken away, I smiled slightly. I stood up and suggested to the police. "Officer, my daughter's depression is severe. She destroyed a jewelry store, pushed someone off a building, and helped her father frame me. Her actions are serious. Considering she's a minor, I suggest sending her to a juvenile detention center for proper discipline." The officer thought for a moment and agreed. Now, it wasn't just David being taken away. Jessica's world collapsed as she was handcuffed, showing her true ugly face, cursing me. "You bitch! Who do you think you are? Die!" Hearing her vile words, I wasn't angry. I smiled at her. "Because I'm your mother, Jessica. I have to be responsible for you." Then I turned to the officer. "She seems mentally unstable. Maybe she should be sent to a psychiatric hospital." Chapter 12. Fortunately, my father found evidence of his innocence and cleared his name. Our company was restored, and life returned to its former glory, as if David and Jessica had never existed. 2 years later, the police informed me that David had escaped from prison and was still at large. I was worried and decided to check if Jessica was still in the psychiatric hospital. Her face was gaunt, her skin clinging to her bones, her eyes hollow and terrifying. Seeing me, she went wild, clawing at the glass door. But she couldn't reach me. I tested her. "I heard your dad escaped a while ago. Why hasn't he come to get you? He abandoned you too." She froze, then pounded the door with her fists, blood seeping from her hands. Now I was relieved. Jessica's reaction showed she didn't know David had escaped. It seemed David had left her behind to save himself. Walking home, I encountered a familiar gaze on the street. The man holding a knife looked haggard but familiar. David had come to kill me. I ran and he chased me. Hearing his footsteps getting closer, my heart pounded. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. Instead, I heard several women's laughter. "David, we finally caught you. You won't escape this time." I turned to see several burly men subduing David. Several women my age joined in, kicking and punching him, cursing him. "You scumbag! You think you can get away?" David looked up, shocked to see one of the women. "Paige, what are you doing here? Paige, help me!" I was stunned. The woman in the center was the wealthy Paige. "You think I didn't know you were using me?" She sneered, slapping him hard. David's face swelled instantly, leaving him dazed. Paige signaled her bodyguards. They swarmed him, beating him mercilessly. David, bloodied, begged for mercy, but they didn't stop. He crawled to me, grabbing my leg. "Catherine, please save me. I was wrong. If you save me..." Before he could finish, I kicked him in the face with all my strength. Who didn't know what he was thinking? Since our company was restored, I lived a wealthy life again. David couldn't sit still. His kidnapping plan failed, so he tried to gain my sympathy. David screamed in pain as the police arrived and dragged him away. "Don't worry. I've arranged for special care for you in prison." Paige and the other women sneered. After David was taken back to prison, I learned. He had deceived many wealthy women, all of whom had returned for revenge. In my previous life, after abandoning me, David ruined Paige's life before moving on to other wealthy women. My successful retaliation was thanks to Paige's secret help. Bringing David to justice was a collective effort of many wronged women. Years later, my life finally returned to peace. Without David and Jessica, My life was more comfortable. One day, while driving with Paige, we ran into Jessica. I didn't know when she was released from the psychiatric hospital. Paige recognized her and deliberately stopped the car in front of her. I got out, arms crossed, and approached her. She recognized me, first stunned, then glaring at me. "You bitch, here to mock me? So what if you won? Your family went bankrupt and you're broke. You don't even know your dad was framed by my dad." She laughed maniacally, trying to provoke me. I didn't respond directly. Instead, I put on my designer sunglasses and got back in the car. "By the way, I always knew your depression was fake, but you probably do have a mental illness. Goodbye, lunatic." I whispered as I rolled down the window. Seeing the luxury car, she froze. As we drove away, I saw Jessica chasing the car, shouting, "Mom, I won't follow Dad anymore. I only have you." A greedy ingrate. But karma came quickly. Ignoring the traffic, she was hit by a car and died instantly. Soon after, I heard David was beaten into a vegetative state in prison. Finally, the weight lifted from my heart. Looking at the sun, I saw my future.